Hello world, this is JDP with a tutorial on how to implement ModuleAaGimbal. And as the post says, ModuleAaGimbal is a subclass of ModuleGimbal. That means that it does pretty much, well, it does exactly the same thing, but it looks different. As the example video I've already shown, shows you, the fins are rotated individually around their own pivots instead of rotated around the thrust transform, which is the result you'll normally get if you just have the thrust transform as parent to your mesh. But yeah, in terms of what it actually does, gimbaling the thrust itself, the physical force, it does pretty much the same thing. There is a small bug fix though. I fixed a bug in the stock module. You may have noticed that if you activate the engine through right-clicking or through action groups, the gimbal isn't activated. The engine needs to be activated by the normal activation method first. That's fixed with this module. It will work either way. But yeah, let's get to it. Normally, you just have the thrust transform as parent to each of these objects, but here it's a bit different. First of all, you'll need to encase everything in a transform. Here I simply use the engine transform, but it could be anything. It could be an empty transform if you want to. But it's very important that this transform, that the thrust transform is a child of a transform, because it will look through the parent of the thrust transform to find each fin pivot that it should anchor to the thrust transform itself. So if these fin pivots were moved outside of the engine transform, they wouldn't be registered at all. And if you had more than one thrust transform within this engine transform, it would behave oddly. I haven't actually tested it, but I can pretty much know that it will behave very odd. Not like you intend to, in any case. But let's get the thrust transform needs one child, the fin anchor. Fin anchor, that's just an empty transform. It's used in calculating how to actually rotate each fin. And the fin anchor should really be centered around the z-axis of the thrust transform, because, well, the thrust comes out the z-axis. So x, 0, y, 0, and z, something positive. You can move this whichever way you want, and it will affect how the fins will react. Because, well, the way it calculates how much it needs to rotate each fin is it looks at the distance between this fin tip and the fin anchor. So if you fiddle around with the position of fin tip and fin anchor a bit, you can get some pretty interesting behavior. But yeah, fin anchor. Yeah, and finding the name in the module. First of all, the thrust transform, that's found in the usual way. Gimbal transform name, that's the name of it. And the fin anchor, that's fin anchor name. So let's get pivot, the fin pivot. Again, it's a child of engine. It needs to be rotated a very specific way in order for this to work. The x-axis needs to point directly at the thrust transform. The y-axis needs to point directly along the z-axis of the thrust transform, directly down. And the z-axis needs to point directly clockwise, seen from this direction. And yeah, and it needs to be rotated this way in order for it to work. The fin pivot has two children. The fin itself, that's just the the physical object. It could be gone, but then you just wouldn't see anything. And the fin tip. The fin tip, that's important. As I said, that's what's used to calculate how much to actually rotate the fin pivot. And again, the fin tip, it should really be centered around the y-axis this time, of the y-axis of the fin pivot. So x0, c0, and y something positive. And again, you can move this every which way. It will affect how it actually behaves. In this case, I simply had the fin pivot to be at the same position as the thrust transform, same height, and the fin tip being at the same height as the fin anchor. And yeah, fin pivot, that's fin pivot name, and fin tip, that's fin tip name. So in the config for this, I'd say I'd have fin anchor name equals fin anchor. Gimbal transform name equals thrust transform. Fin pivot name equals fin pivot, and fin tip name equals fin tip. And yeah, I think this was it. Oh yeah, multiple thrust transforms. Of course, in the regular module gimbal, it's possible to have it control more than one thrust transform at once. You can do the same here, as long as you keep the hierarchy intact, where it has a master transform here, that it's a child of, and that all its fin pivots are also children of. So, boom. Now we have a 2-engine part, and it will work. These 3 fin pivots will be anchored to this thrust transform, and these 3 will be anchored to this. And yeah, and of course you can also have more than 3 fin pivots. You can have anywhere from 1 to 1 million, or you can have more than 1 million, 1 to whatever the max integer amount is. And no problem there. So you can have just a very, very simple setup of 3 fins, or you could have something very, very complex with an entire array of interlocking fins that move in a way that seems almost organic. I have never bothered actually trying to make such a model. It would take some time, and I'm by far not really a modeler primarily. So I'll leave that to you if you so desire. I think it could be very awesome. Well, I think this was it. If I forgot to say anything, or if there's anything more you'd like to know, feel free to post with any questions that you have related to the modules here. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you for your time.